Good afternoon, everybody. If we can get our seats, I think we're gonna get things started. Wow, E.F. Hutton doesn't even do that. First of all, thank you very much. I'm Representative Kerry Benninghoff. I'm out of Center County. I want to wait till we get a couple more members here. I want to thank our members for joining us, and Marcia Hahn, our good friend and gracious host. You and your staff have done a bang-up job getting this organized. Our goal as the House Republican Policy Committee is to travel across the state. This is the second of a series. We were down in Marcus Hook yesterday, trying to see what we can do to help strengthen the middle class, try to get the more people employed, and obviously stimulate Pennsylvania's economy through those types of initiatives. Our goal is to hear what not only we might be doing well in Pennsylvania, but what we could be doing better, how we can better assist you, and what we can do to help keep Pennsylvania's families strong, prosperous, employed, raise their children here, go to school here, and pay taxes here. So without further ado, again, I'm Representative Kerry Benninghoff. I'm going to start, turn the microphone to Marcia, and then go to my right, to the left, and have the members introduce themselves and which county they are in. And last but not least, I want to thank my own staff for the support and what they've done for us. Marcia, your show.
Thank you, Chairman. First, I want to thank Hanover Township for their hospitality and allowing us here. Jay Finnegan, the manager, is here, so I want to thank you and the supervisors for a great venue. Thank you. Welcome to my district, everyone. And I want to mention we have two staffers here representing Representative Simmons and Representative McKenzie. I think that, and Ruth from my staff is here, so thank you, Ruth, for all the help that you've done.
And I'm Representative Zach Mako from Lehigh and Northampton counties, the 183rd.
Hi, good afternoon. Brian Cutler from the 100th District, which is Southern Lancaster County.
I'm Representative Jeff Whelan from the great home of Little League Baseball, Williamsport, Pennsylvania. You got to come up in August. Yeah, well, we do have a football team, but Little League Baseball is what we're known for. But thank you all, and you have a beautiful part of Pennsylvania here, and enjoyed the trip down.
Doyle Heffley, 122nd District, Carbon County. It's where everybody from Lehigh Valley goes on a weekend.
Again, Representative Kerry Benninghoff, represent parts of Center County and Mifflin County, and we have a really big football team up there, Jeff. Without further ado, we're going to introduce our first panel. We have James Fisher, Small Business Development Center, Lehigh University, College of Business and Economics, as well as Don Cunningham for the Lehigh Valley Economic Development Corporation, and Chad Paul, Ben Franklin Technology Partners. You gentlemen can flip a coin, decide who goes in order. You can do it alphabetical, but I think I'm going to have all panelists speak, and then the members will ask questions subsequently. Thank you.
There we go. As you said, my name is Jim Fisher. Starting in January of this year, I became the new director of the Small Business Development Center. To begin, I'd like to thank Representative Hahn and the other committee members for inviting us here, and I applaud your efforts to focus on the regulatory burden on small businesses. Before I address specific issue of governmental regulation impediments, I would like to, people are not that familiar with the Small Business Development Center. They think they are, but they don't truly understand the width and depth of the things that we do, and I'd like to do a little bit of an overview. We're among a network of 18 such centers throughout the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. We're also part of a much larger U.S. national and U.S. territorial network. We are in Guam, we are in the U.S. Virgin Islands, we're anywhere that the United States government is in place. Now, we personally are headquartered in Bethlehem, but our footprint includes all of Northampton and Lehigh counties and portions of Montgomery and Bucks. All SBDCs in Pennsylvania are hosted by universities and colleges. Elsewhere, some are with economic development agencies, but we're all funded in the largest part by the Small Business Administration, federal agency, through grants. The Pennsylvania network also receives its primary state matching funds through PREP, Partnership for Regional Economic Performance, and we greatly appreciate the ongoing funding that we provided. In fact, Lehigh Valley Economic Development Council, and my friend here, Don Cunningham, is also part of the same regional PREP area that we're in. So with nearly 1,000 SBDCs worldwide available to provide no-cost business consulting and low-cost training, we are the most comprehensive small business assistant network in the United States and its territories. And our mission is to help new entrepreneurs realize the dream of business ownership and to assist existing small businesses to remain competitive in the complex marketplace of an ever-changing global economy. Now, Lehigh University SBDC has existed for over 35 years, and we offer an array of services to the local business community, including such specialties as contracting with the federal and state governments, business technology development, and import and export. In fact, our center is the premier import-export SBDC in the state. We just recently had our premier event called Bringing the World to You. We also most recently received additional funding to expanded counseling on cybersecurity, which is ever-increasing area of concern. So the way that we interact with new startups in particular, because that's a specialty of ours, we deal with existing small businesses, which is up to 500 employees for manufacturing, non-manufacturing up to $7.5 million a year. So when the SBA says small, they don't truly mean it. But we have a first step program, and we educate entrepreneurs and small business people about how to get into business, how to start, what are the permits and licenses, what are the registrations you need to do, what are the regulations you need to be aware of and you need to comply with. But the most important thing we do in our view is we assist small businesses through our financing assistance program. We help them obtain funding for a business start or expansion. And this is by far the greatest area of focus for our clients. And indeed, it may well impede their ability to properly focus on other areas such as regulations. The searching for money to allow them to do what they need to do is an overarching concern. As to our impact, I believe the results speak for themselves. And I provided the committee with a worksheet that showed the statewide impact. I'd like to summarize it very briefly. I think the numbers are very impressive. From January 1, from 2011 to December 31, 2016, we as a whole in the state of Pennsylvania impacted over 52,000 jobs. That means we either created them or we retained them. We assisted in raising nearly $1 billion in client financing. We generated nearly $2 billion in new domestic sales and $390 million in international trade sales. And as the result of our activities, an additional $60 million in new taxes were raised. But of equal importance, those of you who do not have this form can't see it, but at the bottom of the form, it states that 83% of firms started with SBDC assistance are still in business after 8 years. Now, the common range for small businesses after only 3 years is somewhere between 5 to 25% survive that first 3-year period. So the fact that businesses who work with us are still existing after 8 years, I think is an indication of the effectiveness of our work. As to our center itself, I'll very briefly summarize. Over that same 5-year period, we assisted over 2,200 clients, created over 300 new businesses, helped raise approximately $46 million in new sales, $318 million in new domestic sales, $46 million in financing. And as a side note, which I'm very proud of because I had nothing to do with it, in the 2017 inaugural Lehigh Valley Business Magazine Reader Rankings, Lehigh University SBDC was just named Best Management and Coaching Consultants in the Valley. As I said, I only recently started as director. This happened before I got there. But to me, it's a tribute to the staff that I inherited, the dedication and professionalism, and I believe it's reflective of the network as a whole. So, getting down to the ground level, on a day-to-day basis, while we do offer various seminars and training sessions, the bulk of our work involves direct counseling with entrepreneurs and small business. Telephone, email, in person. Very time-involving, but also very effective. We therefore believe we have a very good ground-level feel for the issues that confront new and existing small businesses. And many of these concerns are indeed regulatory, which is part of the focus of this hearing. However, I do note our mission and mandate as an SBA tax-supported program is one of providing real-world objective insights into what is involved in starting up, growing, and sustaining a business. And under our charter, we are precluded from advocating any positions regarding any specific regulations or any policy-related matters, nor can we lobby, nor can we affiliate with anyone who lobbies. We are the neutral, objective source of information and input for small businesses. So what we do in the regulatory arena is we assist our clients to successfully navigate the regulatory landscape in whatever form it might take at that point of time. Therefore, all of our consultants have both general and specific expertise that includes the tracking of existing and new government regulations. Now, that being said, in preparation for this hearing, we did reach out to certain clients regarding what regulatory issues or delays they may have experienced, either in starting a business or in operating a business. Specific general responses, for example, include ambiguous state and local regulations that are too often are open to interpretation, and they allow authorities to create delays in construction, permitting, and more. Several pointed out the complexity of both state and local sales taxes, not the imposition of the taxes themselves, but the challenge in keeping track of changes as well as properly applying them. More general areas of concern we observed over time include state environmental regulations that often come to bear upon small businesses, especially those involved in food preparation. Once again, it was an issue of complexity. It was not an issue of whether the regulations should exist. So this is not to say that any of these regulations are in any way ill-considered or onerous in and of themselves. Rather, it has been our experience that it is more often the overwhelming nature of the regulatory landscape as a whole that can discourage entrepreneurs and small business owners from continuing to pursue their dream and therefore create new jobs. So we as an organization would welcome any effort to reduce both specific and over-regulatory burdens for small businesses and startups. And at the same time, we would welcome any additional resources that could be made available to better equip small business owners to deal with the overall regulatory landscape that exists at any given moment, because they often cannot survive until modifications to the existing regulations can take place, and they just have to deal with that environment. So thank you once again for your time and opportunity to appear before you, and I hope I have in some way assisted you in your endeavors.
Thank you very much. In the interim, I'll recognize we've been joined by Representative Gary Day. Had a senior moment there, Gary Day. I want to put an emphasis on that last name. Thank you for joining us. You also had Lehigh, Berks, and what other areas?
Lehigh and Berks County.
Might not know your name, but I know where you're from. Good to have you here, Gary.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you very much for being here. And my name is Don Cunningham. I'm President and CEO of the Lehigh Valley Economic Development Corporation, and we thank you for coming out to ask for our input related to the state budget and policy around economic growth and jobs and prosperity for the people of Pennsylvania. My organization is a little bit different than the other gentlemen here. We work together very closely. We're not directly funded in any way by the state. We are a private-public partnership. We were started about 20 years ago by the corporate leadership of the Lehigh Valley, the large employers here that banded the counties of Lehigh and Northampton together under a regional umbrella to recognize that the Lehigh Valley could best market itself and work on growing its economy as a regional entity. We managed to put under that umbrella both counties, Lehigh and Northampton, the three major cities of Allentown, Bethlehem, and Easton, and we work as really a regional shared services center to provide economic development services and financing for the region. We are equally publicly and privately funded. We get a portion of the hotel tax that's collected here by people who visit Lehigh and Northampton counties, and then by investors, by our corporate investors, and the money that we earn off of financing programs. So as I said, we've been in existence for a little bit more than 20 years now. When this organization came into being back in the year of 1995, this was a very different economy here in the Lehigh Valley. We still had steel making, we still had textile mills, we had a very heavy industrial manufacturing focused economy. Today, 20 years later, 22 years later, we've transitioned into something that we couldn't have imagined 20 years ago, which is we've lost a lot of that heavy industry, but we are back to a point where manufacturing is the largest part of our economy in the Lehigh Valley, which makes us slightly different than most of Pennsylvania. We have about a $37 billion GDP coming out of these two counties, and about $5.6 billion of that is in manufacturing. So we have about 680 manufacturers employing about 32,000 people across both counties. And the new GDP breakdown numbers come out later today, so those numbers may be different tomorrow, but as of today, that's what they are. We are the third largest region in the Commonwealth after the Philadelphia and Pittsburgh region, and we have been the fastest growing economy on a per capita basis for the last 5 years. In fact, just to give you some quick oversight, last year's ranking of economic activity across the country, we were the fifth fastest growing market in the northeastern United States. Only New York, Boston, Philly, and Pittsburgh were ahead of the Lehigh Valley in economic growth projects and investment. So needless to say, we've been growing rapidly here. A good reason for that is because of our location here. You are, for those of you not from the Lehigh Valley, you're sitting 80 miles outside of Manhattan. You're 60 miles from the port of Newark. We have about 92,000 people a day come in and work here from Carbon County, Schuylkill County, Monroe, Eastern Berks, and the upper Philadelphia suburbs. We have emerged as a major industrial and logistics fulfillment corridor along with manufacturing and as a job center. Just last year, LVDC, our organization, which coordinates all of your state financing programs and federal programs, provided access to about $240 million in financing, a lot of that coming through state entities like PETA. That created about 1,500 jobs just through leveraging state financing programs. So while we're not a direct recipient of state funding, the state is a huge partner. You can't do economic development, you can't do recruitment, you can't compete with neighboring states like New York and New Jersey without partnering with the Commonwealth, with your muscle and your money to get that done. I just focus my remarks in the interest of time on a couple of things that should be on your radar of concern. Some of these things you know. Mr. Chairman said we want to know what's going well. We also want to know where we may need to make some improvements. For those of us who very much access the economic development initiatives of the Commonwealth, there's reason for some concern. You only have to go back to DCD's budget in 07-08. Less than 10 years ago, it was $631 million. Today, it's $134 million. While we understand that many things have changed in 10 years and that you all wrestle very much with fiscal issues, many of the programs and initiatives that were in place to help us compete and attract companies and manufacturers to the Lehigh Valley in Pennsylvania are now gone. A significant amount of funding has just ended. So, I ask all of you to, as you go through your struggles, and I don't envy the jobs that you have to do, but these are investments in future growth of Pennsylvania. In fiscal year 07-08, there was over $90 million in discretionary funding to support business expansion, retention, and relocation prospects through 3 different programs, through opportunity grants, customized job training, and infrastructure development. These funds were used to compete against other states, to win business relocation projects, and to incentivize local businesses to stay and grow here. In this year's budget, there's only one flexible economic development program left. That's Pennsylvania First, and it only has $20 million in it for the entire Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Probably of greater immediate concern is the most recent House budget, which sweeps funding from the Pennsylvania Industrial Development Authority and the MELF Loan Fund. It for all intents and purposes, it removes the state from economic development, engagement, and any kind of assistance to manufacturers or companies we are competing to recruit into Pennsylvania. These funds are aimed at growing our manufacturing base, and I can tell you, if you're looking for case studies in success of investment and return, you need to look no further than the Lehigh Valley. We currently have about $7.5 million in loans in the pipeline just in these two counties for manufacturing that would be jeopardized, would go away if the budget as passed goes through. That's supporting an additional $25 million investment and another 500 jobs, either retained or new, within Lehigh and Northampton counties. So this loss of funding is heightened by what's going on in New York and New Jersey. You know, Pennsylvania is an interesting state because we touch many different markets, medium markets and competitive markets across the state. We're at the forefront. In New York and New Jersey over the last 3 or 4 years have greatly increased, both reducing their regulatory burden and investing in economic growth initiatives. Most large companies, manufacturers that are looking at the Mid-Atlantic are going to look at Pennsylvania, New York, and New Jersey. When we sit down at the table to try to finish a deal with absolutely no programs, no investment, no commitment from the Commonwealth funding-wise, puts us at a very huge competitive disadvantage. Now, I'm not talking about Wisconsin-esque $3 billion to give to Foxconn over 30 years. I'm talking about equipment financing for manufacturers, training for workers, things that are quite commonplace among states that we have retrenched from. So if we're real interested, you look at Pennsylvania's rankings now, I mean, we're in the 45th to 50th category in terms of both business executives looking at state engagement and economic development and the community we work with the most, site selectors, industrial commercial brokers, location advisors. Their latest ranking has Pennsylvania also in the bottom 5 of 50 states. So our concern is that this word is out there now. It's out there among those who direct investment. You know, we're not showing up on lists we ought to be because we're not engaged at that level. So there's really no nice way to put this. I'm sorry about that. It's just that while incentives alone don't win deals, there's hardly a major employer that doesn't look to some level of state engagement, really just to show at least some level of commitment that governments want companies to be here or to stay here. And we have to react to our competition, both on retention of existing companies, which is job number one, and recruitment of new companies into market. The Lehigh Valley is fortunate. About 70% of our job growth has come from organic growth of companies choosing to stay here and to grow here. But about 30% of our jobs have been coming from companies entering into the market. One other point, two other quick points I'd like to make is that because of our unique position here on the East Coast, we see a lot of investment internationally from Europe and China. Lehigh Valley's home to Pennsylvania's only Chinese-owned manufacturer that opened up a plant here. It might be in Gary Day's district, making products in America with Americans to sell to the American market. 2 years ago, 42% of our new companies entering the Lehigh Valley were internationally based and owned companies. The Norac Bakery out of France, the largest baker in France, will be opening up. It's entering the U.S. market in Northampton County just next month. We rely a lot on the state's investment in international recruitment, having contractors in country that are able to ferret out live leads to get companies to come in. I will say that one thing we have to remember is that America is still the largest consumer economy in the world. Any companies making products in Europe, Asia, and South America want to sell into this market. And the tide is shifting with transportation costs going up, with technology reducing labor costs. we're able to make things in America again here that were once outsourced to other countries. We need to keep investment in a network of finding those live leads and recruiting folks to come into the United States and to come in to Pennsylvania and the Lehigh Valley. Finally, the biggest piece of the puzzle in economic growth is workers, is labor, is skills, both availability of labor and then the skills of labor. We are heavily involved in an education and talent supply initiative here in the Lehigh Valley with our schools and our employers to understand what our talent gaps are and to focus on vocational technical training, both in our 9 through 12 and our community college level. The state has been a great partner in that. We have received some pilot funding to do some studies and to get that initiative off the ground. We have gotten some money through our Workforce Development Board. And I will say that that will continue to be the key to economic growth anywhere, is the availability of labor with the right skills. We are quickly reaching what is effectively full employment, particularly in the manufacturing sector and in some of the industrial and fulfillment sectors, where a shortage of workers is our biggest challenge. So economic development folks really are workforce development folks today. We work closely with our Workforce Development Board. We also work closely with our staffing agencies and our universities and colleges to make sure we can continue to grow the economy. So as much as the state can continue to invest in and engage in that, that's going to help the economy of the Lehigh Valley. It's going to help the economy of Pennsylvania. I'll conclude by just saying, obviously, overall tax burden and regulatory issues obviously are critical factors in any site determination. The net corporate income tax in Pennsylvania at 9.9 remains a burden for us in terms of executives and site selection folks looking at that in comparison to other states. I mean, the more we can continue to find ways to make the business taxes competitive, the better off we will be. Obviously, as Jim said, on regulatory issues, which are not always state-based, a lot of them are local government-based, the more streamlined, efficient, and effective they can be, obviously, again, we'll continue to be able to be more competitive. But again, I thank you for your time and your attention, and hopefully we all can kind of turn the tide on some of this investment back into economic development initiatives across Pennsylvania.
Thank you, Don, very thorough.
Yeah.
Chad? Clean up better.
Sorry.
Clean up better.
We are on our way to Little League heaven, right? Good afternoon, Chairman Benninghoff, Representative Hahn, and members of the committee. I'm Chad Paul, President and Chief Executive Officer of Ben Franklin Technology Partners of Northeastern Pennsylvania. Thank you for inviting me to testify today. I appreciate the opportunity to discuss our efforts in creating and retaining highly paid sustainable jobs in Pennsylvania. Ben Franklin has garnered outstanding job creation and retention results since our founding in 1983, and we've emerged as the recognized gold standard in state-funded technology-based economic development. On behalf of our board staff and the thousands of regional companies and tens of thousands of Pennsylvania workers who have benefited from the Ben Franklin program statewide, I want to thank you for your past support. The funding that you've provided to Ben Franklin has been invested in companies and projects that have a direct, positive, and continuing impact not only on our communities, but also in the development of the Commonwealth's tax base. Ben Franklin makes capital investments in early-stage technology companies. Our selection process is competitive, selective, and arduous. We meet with many entrepreneurs, we evaluate their business models, assess their ability to scale their businesses and create good jobs, and gauge how well we believe they will be able to execute on their strategic plans. At least as important as our capital investments is our solutions network of more than 200 proven experts who consult with clients in key areas, including accounting, sales and marketing, business planning, intellectual property protection. In addition, because our vetting process is so well respected by the investment community, our early-stage clients can leverage our investment and endorsement, earning a favored sort of a good housekeeping seal for consideration among angel investors, venture capitalists, and other institutional investors. I'll pick an example of a client in Marsh's district. Our Ben Franklin client, Innovative Control Systems in WinGap, manufactures a sophisticated computer control system for the car wash industry. Doesn't sound very sexy, but it didn't exist. Prior to this company being created, all of this stuff was manual and it was not connected to each other. Starting with just one founder, the company developed a Windows-based product that controls the entire process from taking the money to sending it through, doing the buffing and the washing and the sudsing and the rinsing into one fully integrated system. It's the only system of its kind. And as a result, the company has grown nationally from its original founder to in excess of 90 employees in WinGap, PA, which is not a place where you see typically larger employers. The company relocated to that new state-of-the-art building in WinCap with some help from Lehigh's Enterprise Systems Center, also based on an engagement that we did with the company. Another part of our mission is to work with established manufacturers to make their products and processes better, cheaper, and faster, keeping them competitive with exporting. So we link these clients to college and university resources to support their product development and their process improvement initiatives that provide companies with a cost or otherwise productivity advantage in their industry, creating and retaining more jobs. At the same time, we're providing university students and graduate students with real live opportunities to be involved with the development of those solutions. One example of such an established manufacturer is another company in Marsh's district called Redeeming Beauty, located in Bethlehem. They produce an award-winning elliptical-shaped beauty blender makeup applicator. Doesn't sound very sexy, but they sell millions of them. Combining an innovative design and material, the applicator allows for line and streak-free makeup application. As a result, with the work that we did with the company and the Enterprise Systems Center, again at Lehigh, they were able to increase productivity in their plant by 28% due to our project. We invested in Redeeming Beauty twice, once in 2014 and once in 2015. They had 25 employees in 2015, and in 2017 they have 138. Company continues to grow. They also won the 2015 Fastest Growing Company in the Lehigh Valley Award and has substantially increased their revenue over the past several years. Because they're a private company, they don't want us to publish those numbers. So just since beginning our operations in 1983, Ben Franklin Northeast alone has created more than 17,000 new jobs for Pennsylvania workers and retained in excess of 27,000 existing jobs. We've helped to start 500 new companies and to develop 1,600 new products and processes. Since 2007, when we first started to count this particular statistic, our clients have actually attracted $1.46 billion in follow-on funding to the investments that we made. The work of the Pennsylvania Ben Franklin Technology Partners has generated in excess of $3.60 of tax revenue for each dollar invested. And this is not a single-year study. We've been doing these studies every 5 years for decades. So we have a sustainable model that we know provides the Commonwealth with a substantial tax revenue return. There are 4 Ben Franklin centers statewide, one each in Philadelphia, Pittsburgh State College, and our corporate headquarters, and many of you have visited us there, located on our award-winning Ben Franklin Tech Ventures business incubator on Lehigh's Mountaintop campus in Bethlehem. Decentralization allows the Ben Franklin network to achieve the overarching goal of applying technology to create and retain high-quality jobs, while at the same time customizing our execution to the specific region that each of us is in. As a pioneer in the nation, with more than 34 years owning and managing our own incubator, Ben Franklin Northeast enjoys particular expertise in business incubation. We provide vital support to entrepreneurs and early-stage firms when they're most at risk, and it's often key to their survival and ultimate prosperity. The reduced operating costs of coming to an incubator are usually what initially attract an early-stage company to us. But when we ask incubator graduates what was most important to them when they got started, they usually cite the business development staff and the mentors that we bring to the table, the sharing of best practices among the tenants in the incubator as even more crucial to their success. Our experience in nurturing young firms has been recognized with the prestigious International Business Innovation Association Incubator of the Year twice. To my knowledge, we're the only incubator that has won that award twice. Since 1983, Tech Ventures Business Incubator alone has graduated 69 successful companies, together grossing more than $1.2 billion of Pennsylvania taxable revenue and creating more than 6,900 jobs. Because of demand, we're currently expanding Tech Ventures for a third time. Our new 20,000 square foot addition will open next month and will support the creation of dozens of new technology-based jobs. The addition will allow Ben Franklin to build on our history as a job creation factory. In the early 1990s, Ben Franklin Northeast developed and seeded the Ben Franklin Incubator Network. Having recently expanded to 15 members, our network is now among the largest in the United States and allows us to leverage our incubator knowledge and experience throughout northeastern Pennsylvania. We're here today to address what is and is not working in Pennsylvania job creation. The Ben Franklin Technology Partners program is clearly working. What is not working is that we've had to curtail our operations and investments due to a 50% cut in our long-term funding level, and further cuts are now being discussed. With inadequate investment dollars, we've had to seriously underfund clients and turn away promising companies that now have nowhere else in our state to go for seed funding. Pennsylvania is missing out on opportunities to create the very jobs that will provide the increased tax revenues that the Commonwealth so sorely needs. The Ben Franklin program is recognized and modeled internationally as one of the best technology-based economic development organizations in the world. We hold proven expertise in job creation and retention. Entrepreneurship and technological innovation will continue to drive and sustain long-term economic growth throughout Pennsylvania. Your support to restore Ben Franklin to our long-term funding level is critical to Pennsylvania's future. Thank you all for the opportunity to be here.
Thank you all three for your testimony, very helpful and insightful. Now we have all the answers, we'll go fix everything. Members to my right, anybody have any questions to start off with? Young lady, Miss Marsha Hahn.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate you coming out and testifying. I think one of the things we talked about, and first, Chad, I want to say Redeeming Beauty is a woman-owned company. So as you can see, it's a minority thing, so we have to make sure that we keep going with that. So just wanted to give a shout out to
Some of us have girls' names.
the women. That doesn't count.
You get half credit, Mr. Chairman.
Credit. So I think one of the things we talked about was education. And Don, I think when I was in high school, the counselors and teachers were always pushing for, you have to go to college, you need a college education. But I think we're seeing a trend now, and I'm not sure the schools are picking up on that yet, but I think we're talking about needing a workforce that, we need welders and electricians and a lot of the blue-collar jobs that are here. So are you seeing that they're picking up on that? Or I know Northampton Community College does a great job. If we need some skill set, they quickly come together with that. But do you think the vocational technical schools are doing enough in the area to meet the workforce?
Yeah, I think that's, I think everything you said is accurate and correct and is what we're seeing, particularly a region like the Lehigh Valley where manufacturing is still a big part of our economy. Manufacturing today is very different than it was yesterday. It's a much more high-skilled demand, very much around technology and innovation. Fortunately, in the Lehigh Valley, you have 3 9 through 12 vocational technical schools that are consortiums of the school districts sending in. CIT and Bethlehem School District have it, and as does LCTI in Lehigh County. And many of those programs are filled in a way that they weren't filled before. But continued, and I serve on the advisory board of all 3 of those schools. I think some of the disconnect between employers and people running manufacturing operations in the schools are the lag time, quite frankly, in trying to get the right programs, the right technology. It's very expensive to get the right equipment there to train kids, to get instructors. But our economy needs more engagement in vocational technical training, both at the 9 through 12 level and then the community colleges, which we're fortunate here. We have 2, Lehigh County and Northampton County, that do a great job. But that's going to continue to be a greater issue. I think it's improving, but we still have some progress to make.
And I think, people have to be aware, parents, I think, have to be aware, and I think they're becoming more aware. You go to the vocational technical school, you can still go to college and still get a degree, because you talk to any of the auto mechanics, the new cars, you have to be able to do the computers and a lot of other things, so more than you did back in the good old days when it was just tuning up the engine. But and I think, the small business, and I know as from our office, we have people that come in and we send them to you. But if you're a small business, you need to have a business plan. You don't just come to you with an idea and then say to you, now what do we do, right? That's more what they do for you. They have an idea and then come to you. But I think with small business, like where do you go as far as helping someone that comes in and get them started?
We will work with anyone from the ground up if they have simply an idea that they want to actualize. One of the first things we do is help them put together a business plan. We do not demand that they have done all the background work. We work with, so we take our clients as they come in.
Okay.
Some of them already have pretty sophisticated documents put together. The problem is if they've gone in too many directions that are the wrong directions. So we like to contact potential clients as early as possible in the stage, and business plan, business model, funding model, structuring what corporate entity should you be, all of the very basic ground level pragmatic decisions that have to be made. And also we like to build awareness in them of what's going to be involved in building a business, not to scare them, but to let them know that there is going to be a lot of work and a lot of concentrated effort, and it has to be done or your business is going to fail, which is in part why I think we have such a great record in terms of the ongoing existence of companies that we've helped start up.
Can a failing business also come to you and ask for help and say, what are we doing wrong?
Anybody can come to us, any for-profit corporation, as long as they're not too large, yes. Anyone can come to us. They fill out what's called a Form 641, and they describe their situation, who they are, where they are, how long they've existed, what they're trying to seek. And then we go through and we assign to different consultants based on their expertise, different clients. If it turns out what they're trying to do is outside of our expertise, we most often will refer them to other SBDCs in other areas. Geographically, it's more challenging, but if the expertise is there. So we do everything we can to accommodate their situation.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Representative Gary Day.
Thank
Then
you.
Representative Jeff Whelan.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, for bringing the policy committee here to Lehigh Valley. Thank you to my colleague Marcia Hahn for organizing this. I've had the privilege and benefit to watch these organizations change and mature and grow over probably 23 or 24 years. And, this panel, I feel like this is a great panel that you've put together. This panel could be an all-day policy hearing, delving into what each organization does. And what I find interesting is I think this group is the epitome of utilizing synergies, where you found local funding. You don't just come to the state hey, fund everything that we're doing and everything that the organization is doing that we're helping. You've found local funding. You've, over 25, 30 years, LVEDC was in the works before it even started. You know, we've had the opportunity to be on that end of it as well. But finding the local funding and the local buy-in, it uses just the synergies to operate the funding that we send to you for these organizations. And also, Don, you mentioned about 600 million down to 100 million. And when I think of those numbers, I also think about how these organizations have learned over time, your organization, what do we need to be doing? So all the questions we ask in Harrisburg in the Appropriations Committee, what is this money going for? What do we need to be doing? Just the basics. And I think that these organizations over a 25-year period have found out, and you mentioned, I'll bring up two, but you can, my question is, I think the two are workforce training companies look for and equipment. And I think those investments are also sticky. If we train our workforce and the company leaves, some of our workforce might go, but the bulk of it stays here for the next company that wants to come with those services. So I think about the money that we're investing actually does stay here rather than an outright gift to the company, to them. So can you talk a little bit about what the money's going for? Is it more than workforce training and equipment? Are there other things that you find are the key things that we should be funding?
Well, and you and I have known each other a long time. We've been working in different levels of government for a long time. I'm probably getting up to the point of 25 years in one level or another watching this. And I've kind of watched this policy shift around economic development in recent years where a lot of it is geographic based. And, you know, it started with KOZs where you had Keystone Opportunity Zones, which basically said if you come and build on this piece of land, the government will incentivize you, right? And then that transitioned into NISs and CRISs, and we have the same thing with LRDAs and so forth. So economic development funding and policy in Pennsylvania has really shifted to geographic specific. The challenge for organizations like mine that compete with other states to bring companies here, keep companies here, while those are really good programs to grow that 100 acres or so forth and so on, it doesn't help us at all, quite frankly, with a lot of our manufacturers that they want to pick their own spot, and they're going to pick their locations based on, you know, what meets their company's needs: access to market, access to infrastructure, availability of workers, affordability of land, things like that. We've kind of reduced what you might call discretionary economic development, which is investment into, like, MELF is the manufacturing loan fund to fund manufacturers' equipment to help with that, workforce training to give so much per worker. Those things, anything that's somewhat portable, I would say in answer to your question, is needed. Not to take anything away from the geographic specific investments, but I think we need to realize that not all companies can be pushed into one spot. They particularly a lot of those that we really want to recruit in the life sciences, biotech, manufacturing, advanced manufacturing, so forth. But you named the two big ones, I think, manufacturing and training.
Mr. Chairman, one other question, is that okay? Sure. So we watch all these neat, sexy television programs like The Prophet. He comes in and he tells businesses what they're doing wrong, and it makes it look so simple and easy. But one thing that he also does is he takes a stake in the company. And it's something that I've talked about from about maybe 10 years into LVEDC being in existence, and also the other organizations. Why don't we share in, when we do hit it big with you know, some of our big success stories, why don't we, just like you said, some of the revenues that come from LVEDC was at AEDC as well, as when we loan money out, that money comes back, the interest comes back on that, and then we reuse those dollars again. Why don't we secure that type of, you know, even if it's not market value of what we're providing, why don't we secure something back so that I get a chance to go back on our Appropriations Committee and say, hey, wait a minute. These organizations actually bring dollars back in. Yeah, sometimes we're the the aid of last resort and we're gonna lose completely, but right now we lose completely anyway. What I'm saying is, why can't we participate in those few that do take off? Take an ownership position or some type of agreement. And I'm sorry to spring this on you guys, but I know you've heard it from me before, or if you want to tell me other people I should go check with. But that would really help us in Harrisburg, I think. Why don't we take, a position in these companies that we help?
Okay. So first, Ben Franklin is and always has been a challenge grant organization. So for every dollar we get from Harrisburg, we have to match with the dollar of local. And we always do very well, much more than that 1-to-1 ratio. Secondly, when we make a loan, which is the form of our investment into a company, it's an 8-year balloon loan, but we also take warrants so that if in fact there is a big liquidity event, we're able to buy shares in the company at the value that it was worth on the day we made the investment. And if in fact that happens, when they go public or they get sold or whatever happens that is the liquidity event, we sell those shares into that transaction. And that money comes back to Ben Franklin, and we immediately use that to reinvest in companies. So,
Is that part of the local share that you match state dollars with? Does that
No.
become a Ben Franklin asset?
No, well, it's a Ben Franklin asset.
Right.
But it's not part of the 1-to-1 match calculation. The 1-to-1 match calculation comes up front. We don't make an investment in a company unless they're able to bring at least a 1-to-1 match to the table.
Is there a way that the Commonwealth could participate the same way?
Well, I know that constitutionally, the Commonwealth can't hold equity.
That's the problem.
So I'm not sure I would know how to craft that.
Okay.
That's probably more for the lawyers.
Thank you
And
guys
that's-
very much for being here today and your time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Marcia as well.
Representative Whelan, and Representative Heffley, and Representative Cutler. No green button.
I hit it once and it didn't turn on. Thank you all. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for hosting this. It was a beautiful drive down on a beautiful day. And to the panel, great presentation. Just a couple of comments, and then I'm going to end up with a question for all three of you. And it was interesting, when I was a lot of windshield time, as I said earlier, I called Kerry. He was lost. And no, that was Doyle. But I saw a billboard for a supermarket that was offering starting positions at $14 an hour. So you can imagine what my question is. We're headed towards the workforce development question. But you hear so much talk in Washington, D.C. about everything from tax reform, which I believe, Mr. Cunningham, you advocate for at the state level. Certainly, also you advocated for elimination of deregulation on a lot of fronts. And of course, that same talk is going on in Washington, D.C. And if that results in manufacturing coming back to the Rust Belt, and again, I'll just point out on this chart that Mr. Fisher provided, only 13% of the folks you work with basically is manufacturing, whereas the service sector is 57%. Now, we all like service sector, but I think it reflects that our manufacturing, which is really the backbone, or was the backbone of Pennsylvania, that's sad that it's not more evenly split as far as we move forward, as we try to reclaim our greatness here in the Keystone State for heavy manufacturing. So, question one, workforce development. I've been doing tours in my own manufacturing plants up there, everything from Kellogg's. I never knew there was that many Pop-Tarts made or consumed in the world, and that's only one plant. But also a division of Textron, like Cumming Engines. They make reciprocating engines for aircraft and others in the Williamsport area. And I always end up the tour sitting with either the plant manager, CEO, but I always request to meet with their HR folks. And I have not visited one plant that their number one problem is the median age of their workforce keeps increasing. And when they look to the bench, so to speak, another baseball analogy, there's nobody to fill in, you know, and they're really struggling with this. So workforce development, gentlemen, one by one, what, are you experiencing the same thing with in your areas of expertise?
Yes, and yes. You know, there's two sides of the workforce issue. One is quantity and the other is quality. The quality one we can work on. The quantity one is very difficult. It's hard to come up with more people. We've reached a point in the Lehigh Valley in the industrial manufacturing sector we're, for all intents and purposes, fully employed. In fact, I'll let you know that we competed on about a 6-state prospect. It was a UK retailer that was looking to set up United States, enter the U.S. market, and United States headquarters, United States fulfillment. We came down to a finalist with Atlanta, Georgia, a site in the Lehigh Valley, Old Bethlehem Steel Land site. It's down to the two of us. They wanted 1,600 workers. And every company now hires multiple consultants. It used to be maybe they'd hire one site selector. Now they hire a finance consultant, they hire a workforce consultant, and they break down every component imaginable about your market. They came back with the conclusion that the Lehigh Valley probably couldn't meet their labor requirements, and they selected Georgia. That's a very difficult challenge to overcome when it's sheer numbers. And that's an American issue. It's not just a Pennsylvania issue. It's a numbers game with, as you made reference to, the baby boom generation going out, not having as many numbers replacing it, and then kids not being as interested in vocational arts, the technical, the industrial work, and everybody wanting to be an English lit major and ending up as a bartender, right? You know, as you made reference to the service industry. So, you know, the numbers game is tougher. The quality game is, you know, that one we can work really hard on, which is better vocational technical schools, better training dollars, better community colleges, and I think we've got a good comprehensive effort going on that, at least here. But this problem's not going to go away for us anytime soon.
What do Atlanta workforce provide that we did not?
Numbers.
Was their unemployment rate higher, or what was the?
So the big explosion of growth right now is, you know, everybody orders products on their phone. So direct-to-consumer, e-commerce, retail in the last 5 years has exploded. Certain areas have ended up as the back economy of that, the Lehigh Valley being one. These facilities are right now very labor-intensive. And the wages, you also made reference to that billboard at $14 an hour. The non-skilled labor rate in the Lehigh Valley on average is about $14, $15 an hour now, meaning if you didn't even graduate from high school and you're willing to go work at an Amazon fulfillment center or it's not just Amazon, every retailer has their own fulfillment direct to consumer, you're going to make $14, $15 an hour. So discussions about minimum wage here are really a moot discussion. You don't need the government to create a number because the marketplace is creating a number well above what the government would create it as. But the simple answer there was more people in that Georgia County probably working for a couple bucks less an hour.
Just a follow-up question then. So, and of course, you're all advocating directly or indirectly for monies from the state to assist. And I guess my question is, and all three of you can jump in whenever, should not our concentration be in the educational part of it, the technical part of it? Would our money be better spent there? Because otherwise, you're recruiting and trying to retain, and if there's no workers, I mean, what comes first, the chicken or the egg?
So, like so many of the choices you all have to make, the answer is both. Because if you're not doing the education, you won't have the people for the jobs. And if you're not making the investments in developing the economy and in creating new companies, you won't have the jobs for them when they graduate.
Now, coincidentally, I'm leaving here today and I'm driving to College Station. As an SBDC, we get involved in workforce issues, but at a very low level. But we do partner, and as part of the PrEP partnership, and it's a program called Next Generation. It's a statewide initiative. And the idea is that there are too many entities who are trying to offer services to employers. And so we have this new workforce incentive plan, or we have this new training plan. And the idea is to turn it around and put the employers at the center, service and manufacturing, and start a dialogue amongst them as to what their true needs are on a short-time basis and on a long-time basis. So on a short-time basis, we can respond in a more knowledgeable manner, but on a longer-term basis, students who know that certain areas have a demand level that looks to be projected over a period of time can feel safer in going into some trade they otherwise might have thought was risky. It's a brand new program. It's worked in Colorado to a certain degree. I'm not sure if it's translatable here, but that's one of the things we're trying to explore, is to really respond to the needs of the employers and not just react to them, get in the trenches with them, figuring out a process that will arrive at a solution from the workforce standpoint.
I would just add on, I would agree with Chad. Unfortunately, it is both, because you have to both be able to bring them here, keep them here, and you have to have the workforce to do it. And I don't know what the answer is from a policy perspective, but it seems within the education realm, we have to do a better job in our public schools of letting kids know where the jobs are, families, not just the kids, but parents, that there's options beyond. The problem is that the reality is in America, we let kids pick what they want to be. If Johnny or Susie say, I want to be a theater major, or I want to, parents will fund it. That doesn't mean there's going to be a job at the end of the pipeline. And meanwhile, so it's somewhat is a disparity of where the training goes versus where the jobs are, to try and get some redirection of that, at least through awareness. I think maybe that's part of the answer.
I appreciate your candor on that. I like hearing someone else say that. It's not always what we want to be. I like to dunk a basketball. Something tells me I'm probably not going to. But, we need to really be encouraging people to get employment career paths of what's available. And I think some of our other countries that we compete against are doing that. Yes. Representative Heffley, then Cutler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'll be real brief. I know we're running a little bit behind schedule. One thing I just want to commend the Ben Franklin Technology Development Authority and the work that they do. I serve on the board, and I can say when they have their showcases and you get in to meet all these different folks that are designing cutting-edge technologies, one of the things that we can never forget about as you look at workforce development, the need for employees and everything else, is productivity. And some of the things that you talk about, the car wash. Years ago, it used to take 3 or 4 people or 5 people to work at a car wash. Now, you swipe a card and you go through, you don't see a person. So those types of things, that productivity is driven by the free market to compensate for that. And at the same time, we do see, as you mentioned, wages increasing. And I would just coattail on what Chairman Benninghoff had said is, it may not be the job that you want, but it's a job that you have to do until you get the job that you want. I think that's a philosophy that's missing right now in our society. But we all have a lot of difficult decisions to make when it comes to budgeting. Obviously, we all know the importance of economic growth and the work that you do, and certainly is something that I appreciate you being here to testify and highlight what it is that you do as part of that chain for economic development. So thank you.
Representative Mako.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and gentlemen. Just want to point out, Representative Heffley, we wear ties down here in the Lehigh Valley during the week. So I know you're on the weekend status, but
About an hour ago, I had a hard hat on at a road site, so I didn't get a chance to put my tie on.
oh, okay. So I wanted to field a question about these damn kids, these millennials that are on the bench over here. Would it be more beneficial if we could redirect some of the FIA money to people that aren't just going to colleges? Would that help out as far as for training?
Well, it's certainly a really interesting idea. I think, within the realm of funding education, I think, again, not just Pennsylvania, but the United States has to look at some policy decisions around that to try to at least drive awareness or incentivize young people to look at where the jobs of today and tomorrow will be. Whatever levers can kind of be moved on that. That's really up to you folks. But I think that's an interesting thing to look at.
Thank you, Representative Mako, and I actually concur with that thought. We often hear people, especially those that are re-entering the work market, maybe single parent, trying to raise children, go to school. Most of them have the desire, and they don't have the money, one, to pay for childcare, work part-time, and fund a school, but yet they're not applicable for outside of anything that's not within the higher ed realm. So it's an interesting concept. I have two quick questions. Chairman's prerogative. You get to ask a question if you have time, but real quickly, I was curious of what some of these companies outside Pennsylvania are really looking for as far as incentives. And if you hear from any of these different companies, because I'm as concerned about retaining who we have, but as we talk about trying to track businesses in Pennsylvania, keep them in our parameters, I want to know, what are they looking for in these incentives? And more, in second, what programs the Commonwealth has or had done that you felt are worthy investments? One of the big frustrations we have as policymakers is everybody wants more money. Everybody wants money from the government, whether it's state or local. But we don't always get good assessments about what's really functioning and purposeful. I feel you folks put faces on the dollars that we're asked to distribute. But if you're around long enough, every governor comes in and creates a new program.
Yeah.
And every senator who's leaving wants to create a program, and every House member who wants to stay there creates a new program. And so everybody's very well intended, but what is the best investment for our dollar?
Yeah. Well, I couldn't concur more. I mean, I've spent a good part of my career working in government and economic development, and I can't keep straight all the different programs and acronyms that every new administration that creates. But I will say in kind of a 10,000-foot level answer to your question, it's interesting, this discussion of incentives, because more than anything, they probably are looked at by companies as a way to level the playing field a little bit. When companies look at burdens on regulatory process or burdens on taxation and the multiple taxes they pay at the state and local and federal level, they almost look at it as incentives, and they can be very minimal, but like a commitment from the state government to offset some of that cost. They've been, as you've pointed out, they've been carved into a myriad of different tranches of programs, from site preparation to training grants to equipment loans and low-interest loans. I would say the ones that we find to be the most effective and I think our best policy are the stuff that revolve around low-interest loans, on getting financing, particularly in manufacturing, where we do a lot of our work, where access to capital and affordable capital becomes really critical. Manufacturers often work on very slim profit margins. They have a hard time competing on rental prices with the large industrial big box fulfillment centers that can pay a lot more, or the hospitals that can pay a lot more. So any kind of help on financing and cheaper access to money becomes really helpful, and then anything else in the arena of training and workforce preparation.
I don't work in that world.
Members, other questions? My left to my right, I want to keep things moving here. There's a lot of questions I want to ask, but I may get back in touch with you. I would also encourage you to stay in touch with us. You have representatives not only from the Lehigh Valley here that travel good distances, and we are trying to make good decisions. And collectively, it's important that we hear from you. partnership. We want to grow jobs, grow our economy. So thank you for the work. I know locals in my area, I do lots without your organizations. And it's very nice to be able to say, yep, I'm not John, but go to Ben Franklin, go to SBDC.
And that's what we want you to do.
No, I think you have history there, and I think it's important that we don't try to be guiding people in the past that we don't necessarily understand. And I appreciate the candor too, because there are some people well-intended who want to start a business that maybe shouldn't necessarily be starting then, because of their background. So thank you for your work. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for being here, thank you.
Thank you all.
We consider that maybe our biggest service.
What's that?
Maybe our biggest service is calling out.
Oh,
people
yeah,
who
yeah,
shouldn't
yeah,
be
yeah,
there.
exactly.
Because they take up resources and then they crash and
Yeah.
burn, right?
Yeah.
Guy.
All right, if we
This
get
is our woman panel.
someone seated.
No, you can't, no, you can't.
We are ready for panel number 2. If any discussions, you can take them in the hallway and continue them. We're going to start with Sue Jarvis, CPA, Bonnie Butts, Vaping Oasis, and Lorraine Facenda, Lafarge Cement, and also Barb Green Blue Mountain Resort. Excuse my hesitation, but when you have a name like Benninghoff, Benninghoff, and everything else I've read in my mailbox, I'm very careful of everyone else's. We are very grateful for your being here. Again, I think that being a proprietor as yourselves, it's important for us to hear some of your frustrations, some of your success stories, and what you think we might be able to facilitate better as the policy committee here in the General Assembly. So, anyone want to start? Very good. We'll start with Sue Jarvis and work to her left. Thank you very much. Again, members, we'll let the panel speak, and then we'll ask questions.
Good afternoon to the committee. My name is Sue Jarvis, and I have a CPA practice in Nazareth, Pennsylvania. I've been in practice for 36 years. I haven't met my colleagues at the table, but I feel like the prior panel was kind of the folks looking from above, looking down, and we're kind of the minions on the ground looking up. So you'll find us to be, I'm sure, users of the various assets and so forth of the Commonwealth. My practice is strictly small businesses. I represent about 350 individuals, about 60 corporations, about a dozen nonprofit agencies. So I have a couple things that I'd like to chat with you about this afternoon, and thank you so much to Representative Hahn for giving me this opportunity. A couple things to bring to your attention. I deal a lot, obviously, with the Department of Revenue on behalf of our clients. I would say that on a positive note, overall, the department staff, whether you're talking to people in Harrisburg, you're talking to people in the Bethlehem office, they're well-versed, they're ready to help. You can manage to foray your way through the system if you need to. The e-services that the Department of Revenue offers through eTides and the web are really quite good. eTides is very easy for myself and for my clients to manipulate. The question and answer section of the Department of Revenue website is generally extremely helpful. We use the Pennsylvania Municipal Statistics a lot, so I think our digital presence is very strong and very user-friendly. One issue that came up this most recent filing season has to do with sole proprietors in Schedule C. The ink was not even dry on sole proprietors Schedule Cs, and I mean before the filing season was even finished, when my clients, and I'd say now probably 75% of our Schedule C clients, received letters from the Department of Revenue already auditing 2016 Schedule Cs. And they're asking for all kinds of documentation to be faxed to them to audit the Schedule Cs. That tells me they haven't even processed the tax return yet. They're just automatically looking at these Schedule Cs. That has imposed a hardship on my clients particularly. They want details and cancel checks and all those kinds of things faxed to them. We fax in exactly as much information as we can fax in. It sits there. Many times we get 2 and 3 requests for that information because they've not done a sample to be audited. My sense of it is that there's no one who's outside of certain parameters that they're auditing. They're just, as a blanket, auditing a large number of Schedule Cs, which to me is kind of uncalled for and unprecedented in my 36 years of practice, I can tell you that. We've complied as much as possible, sent the information in sometimes 2 and 3 times before they finally say, okay, we got it. And the most part, we don't even get a response unless they're asking for additional documentation. The second thing I'd like to talk about is the Pennsylvania Department of Revenue and cybersecurity. At the federal level, cybersecurity is the #1 issue. I myself, my practice this year, I have been the victim of a security breach. Somebody hacked my server and started filing unauthorized federal tax returns. To the tune of about 1/3 of my clients have had unauthorized returns put in the system. This has given us lots of fits and all kinds of hoops that we've needed to jump through. And luckily, my stakeholder at the IRS has really helped to guide us through and help to protect everyone so that unauthorized refunds aren't given out to people who shouldn't have them. However, I will tell you that when my security breach happened, I notified the federal government, the IRS. I did notify the Pennsylvania Department of Revenue. I left a message on their line that was for cybersecurity, in terms of security breaches. Never had a call back. I even discussed the matter with someone at a conference that I was at, where I was actually a speaker, and the gentleman was one of the panelists from the Department of Revenue, took my information specifically, never heard a word back. So I don't know where Pennsylvania stands on cybersecurity, but this is the #1 area that is hugely critical. You know, we've just had the whole Equifax debacle. But tax practitioners are a target, which I didn't know. Tax practitioners are being hacked all over the U.S. Because we have lots of sensitive data. But Pennsylvania doesn't seem to be as interested, should I say, as the feds. Now, most people aren't going to file an unauthorized return with the state because there's not a lot of money to get back. There's not a big refund. So perhaps that's why it's not at the top. But it really needs to be addressed. This is the #1 issue. Moving on to the charitable organizations that we deal with, I personally find that the division of corporations and charitable organizations to be the most difficult branch of Pennsylvania's government to deal with. Sometimes they're just downright atrocious. We had one situation with a local volunteer fire company. We've been filing the annual filings, the BCO 10s, for years and sending in the appropriate information, we thought. Come to find out last year, because they're a volunteer fire company, they don't have to pay the fee, or they pay a reduced fee of, I think, $25. But nobody ever let them know that, and it's probably gone on for 20 years. And they continue to take their fee of $250 a year and process their paperwork. One of the things that I think is critical in terms of charitable organizations reporting is that there's this whole structure of the type of documentation that needs to be sent into the state. So if, right now, if your gross contributions are $50,000 to $100,000, you need to send in compiled, reviewed, or audited financial statements. If they're between $100,000 and $300,000, you need to do reviewed or audited statements. If it's over $300,000 of gross contributions, the organization is required to have an audit, which then gets sent into the Bureau of Charitable Organizations along with their annual registration. I understand the need to keep charitable organizations on the straight and narrow path and keep them honest, because we want people contributing to be sure that their dollars are going for what they should be going to. However, I think that there is not a clear understanding of what compiled, reviewed, and audited financial statements mean, and imposing an audit on an organization that grosses only $300,000 a year is a hardship, because to audit what is truly a relatively small organization, that audit cost probably starts at $7,500 and goes up for there, provided you can find somebody to do it. My suggestion would be that you might want to move that audit level up to the $1 million in gross contributions and have reviewed financial statements done at the $500,000 level. So there is still a good amount of faith in those financial statements, and there has been work done, but it's not a full audit where we're actually pulling out and testing invoices and so forth. That will definitely ease the financial burden on these small organizations that find themselves now, all of a sudden, they've had a good year in contributions. They've now got $325,000 in contributions where maybe they normally had $200,000, and now they're put in the position where they've got to engage an auditor at a pretty high cost. So that would be a suggestion I would offer. And the fourth point that I would like to chat with you about is the recent amnesty. The amnesty, I think, was kind of brought about, it seemed very last minute. The timing of it was not great, starting on April the 18th. So you have practitioners now who are trying to help their clients just coming out of the tax season and now having to scramble to start to get organized to get everything in between that April 18th and I think it was June 18th or so was the deadline for amnesty. So I think that the duration was too short. The time when it started was not the best. The Commonwealth also engaged a credit agency to assist in the collection. That experience was a nightmare because those folks don't understand what the tax returns are that they have been engaged to collect. They don't understand what they're for. They don't understand what they're about. And unfortunately, the Commonwealth was in the transition of moving from an old system within the Department of Revenue to a newer system. Not all the records came over, so if you called Pioneer, they would say, well, you have this, and A, B, and C, and D, and E do, when you know darn well that most of them were not tax returns that needed to be filed. There was a workaround that was come up with the Pennsylvania Institute of CPAs where we could actually correspond with the Department of Revenue, provide them with information, and the Department of Revenue would say, yeah, we have all these returns. There's no need for you to take anything through amnesty. But it became very unwieldy. I think any program where you're bringing, where you're allowing amnesty and allowing the Commonwealth to collect money that it so desperately needs to collect is a good one. Any program where you can bring non-filers under the umbrella and let them be tax-paying entities is always a good one, but I think there maybe is a better way to approach it. We're now in the situation where I've had particularly one client that we took through amnesty, cleared up 2013, cleared up 2014, paid their balance, and now the Commonwealth just called me earlier this week. They wanted to file a lien against them. Well, why do you want to file a lien? Well, our system shows that 2013 and 2014 are still outstanding. We've been trying to contact the taxpayer. We're not getting anywhere. No, we took them through amnesty. They're completely clear. I have the letter from amnesty that says they're completely clear. So the systems are not talking to each other. And I don't know whether there was so much information that came in through Amnesty that it hasn't all made its way through the system, or the systems are just antiquated and or not integrated enough for the people in the field, the agents in the field, to be able to see what's happened with taxpayers. So I brought 4 items to you for your consideration. Just some things that I've experienced in the past 6 months or so in dealing in my own practice with individual taxpayers and small businesses.
Good afternoon. My name is Bonnie Butts, and I'm a medical professional with a license. I practice in 2 states, which I took a reprieve from and cut back on my hours to do something that I really believed in. And I opened a vape shop to help people quit smoking. The effects of smoking are so detrimental to our society on insurance rates, on other people. There's so much money lost through people smoking and not being able to go to work. It's a huge loss for companies. There's nothing good about it. So 4 years ago, I opened a vape shop with my son, and it was a small shop, and we were doing pretty well, and we expanded it a little bit, and within a year, it wasn't just my son and I, then there was 6 of us, and we opened another shop. Our first shop is in Lower Nazareth, and we opened a shop in Whitehall. So it was only a year later we opened another shop, and I was thinking that, you know what, we should really open another shop. We'd have one in Easton. There's a lot of people there that smoke. They could probably use a vape shop there. We need to help people. And then when the budget was passed, we were given a 40% wholesale tax. This wholesale tax was not just 40% of everything we buy every month, it was a 40% floor tax. So on October 1st, we had to count everything in our stores, do a total inventory, and give the state a check for 40% of what we already had. No matter how long it had been there, whether it was sellable, not sellable, we had to pay. Now, every month, besides sales tax, which I give the state $9,000 a month in sales tax, I have to give them a check for 40% of everything that we buy to stock our stores. The result of this is over 100 vape shops in Pennsylvania have closed. There are people that have lost their homes over this. There are people who have left the state because of it. There's people who have left and opened their shops in Florida, Maryland, Delaware, anywhere tax-friendly that they can survive this. They were cleaning out their IRAs and doing anything they had to do to pay the 40%, and they just couldn't make it. So along with over 100 shops closing, hundreds of people have lost their jobs. And it isn't just the job loss. Everything rolls downhill. So now there's no advertising. There's no rent being paid in these spaces. All the services that we use in our community is no longer because the shops aren't here to do it, and the ones that are still here do not have the money to spend on these things in our communities. I know personally in our shop, we support our local fire departments. We support our colleges, their drug and alcohol programs at 3 universities here. We do a lot within our community, but we have to start cutting back on that because the funds aren't there. I have to give the state 40%. I think that if any other business was taxed at 40% wholesale, people wouldn't believe it, but for some reason this was okay. Well, once this tax was passed, we formed the Pennsylvania Vape Association. I'm on the board of directors of the Pennsylvania Vape Association, and we do not believe that in the long term, the state is going to get the funding that they think they're going to get from this 40% tax. 40% of zero is zero. So when over 100 stores closed, not only did you lose the 40%, you also lost all the sales tax. It's gone. Me personally, I pay $9,000 a month. That's over $100,000 a year. And if I have to close because of this, they don't get 40%. 40% of zero is zero, and they lose the $100,000 a year. And that's exactly what's happening. There's people waiting all summer, hanging by a thread, hoping that the state would repeal this tax in September, and a lot of them are going to close now. So even more are about to close now that the state didn't do anything about it. So the board of directors of the Pennsylvania Vape Association, we feel that they got a lot of money up front in this money grab, but as the stores close, they're getting less. And we've tried to appeal to people and try to get the 40% repealed, and we feel that it would be, a lot of shops would be able to stay open if it was a per cents per milliliter tax on the liquid. Other states have per milliliter taxes. We had said 5 cents, and those states been at the other end at 19. We've gone back and forth, and we're trying to settle at 7.5%. At that amount, we would still have the highest per milliliter tax in the country. And most states do not have a tax on vaping at all. But at least it's survivable. We can do something to make that money up, and it's not all on us. It's not all on the shop owner. It's on partially the consumer too. So You know, me personally, I have 16 employees. I have 4 of them are college students. I have 1 who is in trade school, and they all depend on these jobs. They're full-time jobs. They're paid more than minimum wage. They have medical benefits if they need them. Most vape shops are like that. They're like families, and we take care of them. And this is all going away. Vaping is the resurgence of the mom and pop business in America, and we're being pushed out. So on the paper, the 7.5 cents a mill, we had shown what a 5 cents per mill tax would be, and we're estimating that there's almost 185 million milliliters of liquid sold in the state of Pennsylvania every year. So at 5 cents per milliliter, that's over $9 million. That's $9.3 million they would collect. I think their original revenue projection was they were going to get $14 million a year, and that's just not panning out because everybody's closing. If they went up to 7.5 or 0.75, and some people will survive it and some won't, but it is more survivable than 40%. It's at 0.75, they would generate over $13 million a year on the liquid. But this would save us from paying on hardware and a lot of other things in the shop. When we pay 40% on things, there's not even a consistency about what should be paid and what shouldn't be paid. So depending on who you talk to at the DOR or anybody you talk to, everybody's paying different amounts on different things. They're saying, okay, this battery's not taxable, but this is because it has a tank. Some people are saying this cotton is taxable, but I don't have to pay 40% cotton at CVS, and I'm sure they don't pay 40% wholesale on it. So some of the things that we use are used in other businesses, and they're not paying 40%, but because we're vaping, we pay. So if we estimate this 40% wholesale tax being lost through all the people leaving Pennsylvania and try to improve it by passing a per milliliter tax, you would be saving businesses, you would be saving hundreds of jobs in Pennsylvania, you would be saving all of the things that vape shops do to benefit their communities. The spaces that we rent, I personally spend almost $4,000 a month in rent. But when a shop closes, they get nothing. And that landlord who owns that space, he doesn't have the money to spend in his community either. I have stopped doing a lot of advertising, so those people are losing money. So it's not just the vape shops and the jobs, it's everything that goes with it. Like I said, 40% tax, if anybody else was taxed at that, they wouldn't believe it, but so I don't understand why it's okay for us. When you take the vape products out of existence, you also are limiting people's availability to life-saving technology. People will go back to smoking. The prices have already gone up enough that some people have gone back to smoking. This has also created one of the biggest black markets in Pennsylvania. You have to claim 40% if you buy online. So people are buying online to avoid paying the prices in our shops, and they're supposed to claim that 40%, but how many people do you think are really doing that? They're not. So and people are bringing things in from other states and just doing whatever they want, and it's created a huge black market that the state is losing money on also. So when we didn't have this, the stores were operating, they were doing fine, and we were paying our taxes, and everything was going well, and this has stopped our prosperity. I had been looking at a space in Easton that has been abandoned for almost 3 years, and I really wanted to open a vape shop there. It's a nice neighborhood with this terrible building in it, and it would benefit the neighborhood to have this cleaned up. And I would like to do that, but when the 40% tax came down, there's no way, because the state has the money. I can't rent that building, I cannot renovate it, I can't do anything. I would also be hiring more people, and I can't do that. So the 40% on vaping is really damaging small business in Pennsylvania, and it is not generating the revenue that the state thought that it would. As far as what vaping is, there's over 4,000 chemicals in tobacco. When you light it, it creates a total of more than 7,000 chemicals. The only thing that is in e-cigarettes is PG and VG, which is propylene glycol and vegetable glycerin. It's in food, we eat it every day. It's approved by the FDA for consumption. The PED was approved for inhalation by the FDA in 1952 and again in 1959. So it's PG and VG and flavoring and nicotine if you choose it. Most people use vaping and they start at a certain nicotine level and work their way down to the smallest amount or to zero so they don't do it anymore. A lot of people trying to quit smoking, it's the hand-to-mouth motion. It's not the nicotine so much that they're addicted to. And that's why one of the reasons the vaping works. And it allows people to go down through the nicotine to the lowest amount or to zero. So vaping is a huge benefit to the people of Pennsylvania, people who have been long-term smokers, 20, 30, 40 years. It cuts down on Medicaid costs, it cuts down on health insurance costs, it cuts down on money lost by workers in the job force not showing up for work. And we pay taxes. And like I said, I pay $9,000 a month in sales tax, so we are beneficial to our state, but with the 40% tax, we can't do this anymore. So hopefully, the state can see this and change to a per milliliter tax and try to save vaping in Pennsylvania.
Thank you very much, Bonnie.
Good afternoon. I'm Lorraine Facenda. I'm the plant manager. Yep. I'm the plant manager of the Lafarge Whitehall cement plant. The Whitehall plant has been producing materials for the construction industry in the Copley Borough in Lehigh County since 1899. The plant's success is built on our consistent commitment to excellence and our team's drive for continual innovation. And like Lafarge facilities all over North America, the Whitehall cement plant is committed to providing a safe working environment for our employees, being a good neighbor, serving as an active, positive force in our community, and working toward cleaner and greener operations. Portland cement has been produced in our area since the 1800s, and Lehigh Valley can rightly claim to be the cradle in North America for the cement industry. At one time, Lehigh Valley was home to over 50 cement plants. Only 5 remain. The Whitehall plant operates in the highly competitive Mid-Atlantic marketplace, where excess production capacity and cheap imports prove difficult. The cement market has yet to fully recover from the Great Recession. In 2006, Pennsylvania cement companies produced over 6 million metric tons of cement. In 2015, we were at less than 4 million tons. At the Whitehall plant, we remain competitive through innovation, even though every plant in our marketplace is much newer. Almost 50% of our fuel comes from alternative fuels, either waste tires or waste plastics. Normally, these products would be placed in a landfill. Instead, we beneficially use those products to make them into cement and significantly reduce our fuel costs and our emissions. When gas exploration in the Marcellus Shale began to grow, we became the first plant in the region to produce American Petroleum Institute standards so that it could be used in the drilling process. Producing this product allowed the Whitehall plant to support the natural gas industry. The team at the Whitehall plant is continually looking to remain competitive and produce new products to meet the changing demands of our customers. There's 2 things that the government can do to help improve job growth in our industry. Continue an aggressive infrastructure program and improve the environmental permitting process. There's been much discussion in Harrisburg and Washington, D.C. about expanded infrastructure investments, including funding for more highways, bridges, water and sewer system funding, which we strongly support. That aside, I'd like to offer, in addition to greater public and private funding, the need for more predictable and efficient environmental permitting processes, which will reduce the cost of infrastructure and help us tackle the burdens of an aging infrastructure. In order to reduce our operational costs, conserve quarry space, and prevent construction waste from being landfilled, the Whitehall plant, with the support of its waste fuels partner, Geocycle, a Lafarge Holcim company, identifies alternative raw materials such as waste concrete as a calcium substitute and foundry sand to substitute in our manufacturing process. Both these products are widely used in the cement industry, and we have in the past used both of these to reduce our costs and beneficially reuse those products. When the Whitehall plant identifies a supply of acceptable alternative raw materials, we have to get approvals from 3 different divisions of the DEP: waste, air, and mining, before we can obtain those materials and use them in the manufacturing process. Coordinating a prompt response from all 3 offices can make the material not available anymore for us to use in our process. Simply put, it just takes too long for us to get the materials. And then those materials wind up either going into a landfill or going somewhere else. Using alternative materials would help us to reduce significantly our raw materials costs and help the environment by beneficially reusing these wastes that are destined to land in a landfill. It seems like a win-win, but unfortunately, the permitting and approval process makes it nearly impossible. It would be very helpful if the DEP had one centralized approval process, or perhaps a lead agency that would be responsible for shepherding these requests. One office would reduce response time and hold accountable one process or agency. Other permitting issues that we face are in the Title V air quality permits. These permits regulate the air that comes out of our stacks. About 15 years ago, the Whitehall plant, after a lot of research, decided to pursue a permit to add plastic-derived fuel to our kilns. Again, taking plastic that's ultimately destined for a landfill and using the heat content in those plastics in our manufacturing process was a win-win. But the process took almost 5 years. When we look at the states that Lafarge Cement and our parent company, Lafarge Holcim, do business in, only New York and Massachusetts have as similar a permitting process. New York has 2 cement plants. Massachusetts has 0. Our corporate leadership, like any other manufacturer, is looking for investments in plants, equipment, and looks at those to be paid for in a reasonable amount of time. Improving the timeline for the permitting process would allow us to invest in new technologies that could help us to remain competitive in a cement plant that's 118 years old, the oldest operating cement plant in the United States. The problem with approvals being delayed for Title V permits is something that affects all manufacturers, and changes are necessary so that businesses such as ours have more predictable permitting processes, an incentive to quickly mobilize capital to invest in new technologies and processes and keep us competitive. I want to thank you for the opportunity for having me here today to give you this testimony, and I look forward to hearing any questions that you might have.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this afternoon about the issues that we are having at Blue Mountain Resort. A little bit of background for those that don't know who we are. My father started the company 40 years ago. This is our 40th anniversary of being in business. I took it over from my father 10 years ago, and You know, with the weather the way it has been in the last 2 years, it's been very, very, very challenging. And maybe about six or 7 years ago, we have really expanded what we do. We're no longer just a ski resort. We, do weddings. We have a restaurant. We have downhill mountain biking, and we operate a camp during the summer. We have gone from when I started 20 full-time people, and we're now up to 80 full-time people. We have about another 120 part-time people, which we would consider people between 1,000 hours and over up to 1,800 hours. And then, during the season, we employ about another 1,000 people in all the counties surrounding. Carbon is definitely probably the largest, but all the counties surrounding here, all the way down to Philadelphia, is for some of our ski instructors. So, we have challenges growing. I think one of the biggest challenges is capital. Mr. Cunningham with his, one of the best ways to help businesses, and I think I am still classified as small, even though I have all that, all those employees. If you looked it up, I'm still small business, but there's no access to capital. You either have a brand new start, you might be able to get some, but after $5 million in today's financial markets, up to $100 million is extremely difficult to go ahead and find money because of the Dodd-Frank regulations. And there is no state or federal IDA. The resort was founded by an IDA loan, 40 years ago. I tried with the water park to get an IDA loan, and there's just no money. There's no money left in that anymore to go ahead and get the water park up. To try a new venture, to invest in a new venture to get new jobs. So that was one of my items that I wanted to say. Again, another Mr. Cunningham and the dollars. I've been part of the Pennsylvania Tourism, PAT it used to be, and I'm also a board member of Pocono Mountain Visitors Bureau. We used to, when I started, the Pennsylvania budget for tourism was $35 million. We used to be ranked 4th in terms of tourism in the United States. The budget over the last 10 years has gone down. I think this year it's back up to 10. Thank you very much. But I think it was cut previous 2 or 3 years to $3 million, which is about the only thing that they can do with it is do the website for Pennsylvania, Visit Pennsylvania. The neighboring states, New York, probably about $75 million worth of, visitors. New Jersey's higher. They are now putting, whenever they go to a tourism, I heard from the U.S. tourism person that they basically are showing Pennsylvania as the example of not how to support this industry. So for every dollar that you go ahead and I produce, the visitor comes and produces another 85 cents in the local subway, and in the gas station, in the local restaurant, and all the small businesses around us. I can attest to that because 2 years ago when we weren't able to open up until a week after Christmas, and the mayor of Whitehall going, what happened? Because all the traffic comes through Whitehall, and it basically all the tourists didn't come, and they didn't stop off at all the retail shops, and therefore, so it really every dollar that we can invest in that marketing to get more people, especially outside of our state, this ends up being really, really good tax dollars for you in terms of sales tax, because they come and then they leave. you know, so they don't get in the schools, they don't get in the, you know, we don't have to do the infrastructure for them. So there's an added benefit for the tourism industry in that I'm not sure is always put forth and people are aware of. And I'm sorry, I'm trying to be a millennial, and that I've got a code and it went out, so I listed my points here. Again, I think this has been brought up again. Infrastructure projects are key to what I'm trying to do. The Penny's pipeline is coming across our property. They've been saying the Penny's pipeline's been coming across my property and going to be there, you know, by 2017, by 2018. You know, I envision it's going to be 2019. The amount of regulation that they have to go through to go ahead and cut a 50-foot swath of land, which then they're going to go ahead and reseed and reinstitute it's mind-boggling what they have to go through. And in the meantime, I've been trying to develop a hotel. I've been trying to develop a water park, and you can't go ahead and put any of that stuff in if you know I'm going to get cheap gas in, what, 1 year, 2 years? You know, it seems kind of stupid for me to go ahead and spend the money and then not hook up to that very inexpensive gas. The other part of that is I've been really trying to, I'm an environmentalist by heart. I think most of my customers are environmentalists. If you ask them, I went to someplace and I was an environmental talk, and I asked how many people skied, and like 90% of the people raised their hands, and 3% of the population skis. So I have really been trying to go ahead and get cleaner energy, and the Penny's pipeline will bring cleaner energy to me. I'm planning to put a combined heat and power plant in. When I put that in, I'm going to be using the heat from that combined heat and power plant to go ahead and really reduce the cost of the HVAC in the hotel, but more importantly for the pools, make it so that they could be year-round, so that they could be heated, which I think, with all the other water parks around, is going to be a differentiator for me. So not only that, but the combined heat and power plant will go ahead and reduce my carbon footprint by about 50%, because I'll be going ahead and taking that gas, using that energy right then, which is my second largest cost after payroll, and using it right there instead of putting it on the wires. And as soon as it's on the PP&L wires, you're going to end up losing 50% of it by the time it gets to my compressors to need it. At least that's what my environmental engineer says, and my the experts from UGI and everything else. So whatever could be done to speed up the Penny's, the pipeline through DEP, which is, it's imminent, that's where the next holdup of this thing will be. It's definitely going to help all the power plants that are along it, but it's also a really key element. I think between the hotel and the water park, I'm talking about adding another, probably about another 100, 120 full-time jobs, and again another 300 or 400 of my part-time people or the seasonal people that I could now employ full-time, which is what I'm really after trying to do, is trying to get a full year-round resort, so I don't have to, so that I can afford health care for everybody, and that I don't have to lay them off and in that scenario. So infrastructure is key. Just two other infrastructure projects. Doyle Heffley lives in Lower Toe-Mensing. We've been trying for 40 years to get a sewer plant. DEP hasn't. They've never been down to Lower Toe-Mensing. Lower Toe-Mensing, there's an existing sewer plant in it. It's run by Blue Mountain. It's owned by Blue Mountain. I was getting my permit re-upped and had to speak to the director up there who had signed it, administrative thing. And he goes, is Lower Towamensing, are they still looking for a sewer plant? Just recently, I was here 20 years ago, and they were talking about a sewer plant. There's homes there that they're directly going right into the creek. No one from DEP has come down to Lower Towamensing to look at the plant, to look at these houses, as far as I know, to try to go ahead and, how many houses are there, Doyle, 100? They can't sell their homes, and I don't understand why the government agencies that we have can't come down to the specific area to actually take a look at what you're doing at the plant. It's all paperwork, it's all shuffling that they do. And I just want to, it's not all agencies, so I'm going to give you 2 examples of in the permitting process and agencies coming to help. One just recently, a ski area association, we're concerned that we're 40 years old, our lifts are 40 years old, that we are, have very, very safe lifts. And we contacted, as the association, we contacted the Department of Labor and said, can you help us train all our mechanics, because we can't find lift mechanics. Again, the whole discussion about everybody wants to go to college and become an actor or whatever, we're not getting the mechanics. And will you help them train, and we really like to get them to know the inspectors that are coming out, so that there isn't this, oh God, the inspectors are going to come out, we got to hide this from the guys that do that. So we put on this year with the Department of Labor, Joe Marcioni, if you want to pass that name along to the director, was key to this. And we had 100 people up at Blue Mountain getting trained for a day, and 100 people out in Seven Springs getting trained today. Cooperatively, paid for by the Pennsylvania Ski Areas Association, because we really want to have people be safe, and it just went over tremendously. Everybody in the industry really loved it. All the inspectors really loved it. We're finally getting the communication started with a department in a positive light, instead of I'm sending my paper up to DEP, to the sewer thing, and I pray it's not going to come back for I forgot to put the I on the top of the I. I'm going to dot on top of the I and cross the T. And instead, why aren't they helping us figure out what we need to do? Again, another example, DEP, different office, down in the Lehigh Valley, does the water. I don't know why I go up to Wilkes-Barre for one and down to Lehigh Valley for the other, but I do. And the gentleman who is in charge of the water and getting our chlorinated system in came up and looked at our system that we had right now, gave us suggestions of how we should go ahead and create our chlorinated system. I mean, this is probably 6 or 7 years ago that this happened. But, to me, to all of us, it showed us what paperwork we needed to go ahead and fill out. I don't understand why that particular agency and PennDOT agency don't help you come see and help you give direction up front, so we can save time, so we can save engineering money, where we can save frustration, and we can be cooperative. And it's about communication, in my opinion. So whatever we could do, and it's about, maybe putting some level of success on, DEP. How often are you helpful? Like, I know now hospitals, they basically, are going through with Obamacare. They basically are getting measured on the quality of what the guest is saying. So why don't the people that use the DEP or the PennDOT or why don't we have some quality metrics that we can give them? I have to deal with Yelp and how many stars I get and on weddings and everything else, and why don't we have some of that within our government agencies to help improve service and quality of communication? Anyway, just my thought.
Customer satisfaction survey you recommending?
Yeah, I am.
I'd like to read that.
Well, I don't understand. Private business has that all the time. I don't understand why there's a different standard. Just two more. I'm sorry. Just two more things. Workforce, the child labor laws and education. I don't know about any of you, but I started working when I was 14. I used to go ahead and deliver trays in the hospital after school for the nighttime dinner hour. I was around knives, I was around forks, I was around hot water, I survived. And, we have with the child labor laws and adopting the child labor laws, which I understood we got funding from the federal government when we did that, basically shut down the employment of anybody under the age of 18 in my business, in any kind of seasonal kind of business, the restaurants, all those places where kids would go ahead and get their first job and learn how to look people in the eye and how to shake hands and how to give change. And but if you don't follow the hour regulations, which, there's 3 hours and 5 hours, and I tell you, if you worked up on Blue Mountain and I shut down the ticket window when there's a line out the door because I had to tell somebody that they had to go out on break. And I've had this. I've had parents complain to me because we didn't get their kid out on break and they're sitting in a chair selling tickets. I just don't think it always applies. And as a result, we have the lowest employment of people under the age of 17 than we've ever had, ever. And we talk about, and then we have, I'm on the WIB, Workforce Investment Board, then we go ahead and we spend your tax dollars to go ahead and retool these people because they don't know how to look people in the eye. We'd be glad to train them. You know what? Put your cell phone down. We tell them that. Put your cell phone down. You're not allowed to use your cell phone, at the ticket window. They aren't like this anymore. They are actually and I just think we have taken the whole tourist industry is now not hiring anybody under the age of 18 because of those laws, and they're not getting trained on basic human interaction and communication. You can see I have a thing about communication. Lastly, and this is just a new one, there's so much litigation. I don't know how we stop litigation in our country, but the latest one was the Northampton School District decided that they were no longer going to go ahead and put in a program for after school for kids. The school district is no longer going to support that. They basically send, we have an after-school program. It's an extremely cheap product. It's $130, and the kid gets to go ahead and get rentals and a lift ticket 5 times during the season after school. It teaches people how to ski. Skiing is a lifetime sport. Once you learn, it's like riding a bike. You never forget it. And to me, the reasons that they have done it have been numerous. One was workman's comp. They had a workman's comp. One of it was the teachers had to get time and a half. So the teachers get a free season pass to be a proctor when they come, and then they also are going to get time and a half in terms of doing the after-school program. So that was another reason. And the other reason I think and this, it's just not my resort, it's all the resorts in Pennsylvania. I had a conversation yesterday about this. The other reason is that the school districts are no longer allowed to have parent participation in things like that. In a school-sanctioned thing, they have to have teachers that are paid, so they're under all the liability and everything else. And whatever we could do to try to eliminate some of the litigation we have in our country, I think we'd be much better off. I think that's all I got.
Well, thank you very, very much. You, all four of you, very helpful information and stuff what we need to hear. It's painful sometimes to hear it.
Yeah.
And I apologize on behalf of the government for some of those frustrations. I think one of the greatest job development programs we ever had was kids delivering newspapers, and where they had to collect their own money and get out at 5 o'clock in the morning, and we've squashed all that.
No, we squashed it all.
That was back when you were a little boy, Gary. We're going to start with questions. Representative Gary Doyle Heffley, and then Jeff Whelan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you again, another great set of panelists here. First, our CPA. There's a CPA in my district who has echoed this very similar comments that you're talking about. I know there's another member that's working on that has heard the same problems. The one in my district was about the trigger, and I think I tried to keep notes on here. That's what I was doing. I wasn't sending texts or anything. We're trying to be millennials here, but I was trying to keep track of certain things that I wanted to say and then ask you. But you had also mentioned about the charitable service to fire companies and changing that system, maybe increasing when different, you had said the reviewed financial statement at 500,000.
Yeah, as a suggestion, because we have three different levels of financial statements that CPAs issue, compiled. Well, actually, there's 4. There's internally prepared, which in case the organization sends in their own off of their QuickBooks, for example. Compiled, reviewed, and audited being the highest level of service. A reviewed set of financial statements still gives some assurance, although it's a bit limited, that the financial statements are a fair representation of what's going on. And the cost is what
Right.
really concerns me.
And are you also aware that we're in the process of making that change where if CPAs donate their time, it can be counted as continuing ed for CPAs? Are you aware of that effort?
No, I'm not sure what you're...
Okay. I'll talk to you about that afterwards.
Certainly.
But I wanted to make sure. On that question that I just asked you, you have all that information about what your idea is and the 3 different levels.
Mm-hmm.
I just picture in my head 3 lines here and 3 lines there. Could you send that to the chairman in an email?
Sure.
To Chairman Benninghoff?
Sure, I'd be delighted to.
Okay. I think that would be great. That's the part of your comments that I was interested in and wanted to interact with. Also, I heard you say that amnesty programs are great, but the system, it's not lining up, and it might be a glitch between implementing a temporary amnesty system on top of the existing system. I know a lot of our software systems are antiquated, so.
Yeah, and I think it's difficult to bring in a collection agency that really has no background in taxes. I think time would have been better spent to have department revenue employees specially trained for the amnesty and maybe make the program a little longer so that the state could even collect even more money and bring more non-filers into the system.
Many times, there's a battle policy-wise on if you do too many amnesty programs, it can weaken the
It loses its
process
value,
other times. So that's usually what we have as a policy debate in Harrisburg. And we don't really talk about training and setting aside dollars for different employees or different training. So it's something that I think is strong to bring to the discussion.
And I know a lot of people did jump on the amnesty because it was certainly an opportunity, and everybody wants to pay less if they can, for
Right.
sure.
Now, to our next person with the vape shops, I'm going to leave most of this to Representative Whelan. I was just curious, one thing about if you can say what these are, it helps me to do the math and understand the comparison. What is the wholesale per milliliter cost, and what is the retail? What do you sell it for then?
Well, there's different size bottles. So there's 30 mils, 60 mils, 100 mils, 120. So it would be.
Let's say the 120, the largest that you would,
Right.
about one of the
So-
larger ones.
All right, so it would be 0.75 times 120.
I understand, but that's
Yeah.
not my question. My question is, if you would divulge, you don't have to, but if you would divulge, how much do you pay to purchase it, the wholesale price, and then how much do you sell that for, the retail price?
I purchase it for $10 to $12,
Okay,
and then we can sell them for about $29.95. So if I
Okay.
spend $12 on it, and then there's $4.80 tax on that, so now we're at $16.80, and then I sell it for about $29.
thank you very much. The lady from Lafarge, thank you for being here and being an employer in our area. I'm trying not to, I just wanted to thank you for being here. And to our final contestant here, no, but our final testifier here. You have a restaurant. You have a restaurant up there, is that right? What is the name of that restaurant?
It's a Slopeside Pub and Grill.
Yeah, just because you chose not to do the commercial for that, I will. It's an outstanding restaurant to go to. And my wife and I were there, I think it was 10 days ago. It was over 2 weekends ago. So I think it was then, or 3 weekends. It starts to run together. But it's an outstanding facility. This is a great restaurant if you want to go. Anybody within the sound of my voice wants to go up there. You're not going to be sorry to be up there. It's a great indoor facility, outdoor facility. Even in the winter time, you have the fires going, right? And people
Right,
can sit
right.
around the fires outside and just have a great, it's a great venue. And I appreciate you sharing with us all the economic development in the tourism industry that you're providing. And I really like to hear and see an entrepreneur that's driving with so many initiatives to be a great employer in the Lehigh Valley and Monroe and Carbon as well. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
If you could give us your credit card number to go with that suggestion, Gary, would be very good. Representative Heffley?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Not too familiar with CPAs, but thank you for your insight. There we go. Back up a little bit, maybe. There we go. There we go. Let's try that one. But I thank you all for coming out today. I think this is an example of women-owned and women-run businesses right here, and women in leadership. Because I don't think it's about male or female. I think it's about the best qualified for the job. So thank you all for being here today. And real quick on the vape thing, Jeff, I know, I would think I'm a co-sponsor on a bill trying to get that squared away. It is an issue, and I think it just shows whenever government looks at ways to make more money, we can figure out a way to make less money. Lafarge, it's such an important employer in the Valley. Lorraine, I mentioned to you on the way in, my in-laws had a trucking firm, and we were primarily a cement hauler, hauled many loads of cement out of Lafarge, and it is so important. And two things. I know one is a big concern about foreign competition, and right now an issue with a country to our north that is subsidizing their cement, a cement plant that is really looking to come in and compete heavily against us. And maybe not here in Pennsylvania or in the Valley, but in the market that you have in the northeastern United States. So I think it's something that we are all very aware of and wanting to do what we can to protect this industry in the Valley. And also to go along with that, all the environmental regulations and the MSHA and OSHA and everything else that you have to put up with. I know it can be very cumbersome. Obviously, Blue Mountain Ski Resort, I live about a mile from the ski area. So,
And his entire family works for me too. So.
Yes, my mom works there, my sister. And I actually met my wife working there. The first job I got when I was 16 years old was working for Barb's father, Ray, so a lot of history and background there, and just to see the growth and the expansion there, and the many conversations we had between Barb and I about just the incredibly cumbersome process it is to put a shovel in the ground. I mean, looking at engineering fees costing as much as the entire project, it just really is ridiculous. And then you have state agencies battling state agencies and everything else, and then you get the federal agencies involved, and it's just a mess. God forbid you find a bog turtle, and well, we can't get a sewer plant yet. I guess bog turtles like that stuff. I don't know. But it is very frustrating to as we go through those processes. But I just want to commend you for sticking with it. I mean, it's you provide a lot of great opportunities. And just to, I think you've downplayed how large and what an asset Blue Mountain Resort is. But on a given Sunday or Saturday in the peak season, how many people are you bringing in to ski?
On a busy Saturday, there's 14,000 people there.
Yeah.
And so it's and it's not like they're there all at once. It's they turn over. Like I said, the mayor of Whitehall just loves the place.
Mm-hmm.
It's like he actually said he got more traffic for skiing than he does to the mall. So I say that's what he told me. I don't know if it's true or not, but it's like because they all came at the same time. They usually all come up very first thing in the morning. So
And it's so important because of all the jobs. I know just talking to the restaurants, 2 winters ago wasn't such a good winter. Last year was a little bit better. Hopefully this year, I think we're going to have a lot of
Yeah.
snow, a lot of cold temperatures to make snow, and everybody's going to be out skiing. But just the restaurants and the businesses in the area that's seen a significant 10, 20, 30% drop or 40% drop just from those folks after they're done skiing to go out. So I commend you in that you continue to strive to grow and create jobs in a community, and create a tax base for a local community.
So this will be the plug for next year. So the next thing we're going to try to get into is what we call family camping. And we tried it out for the first time this year. Unfortunately, we just said family camping, and some families came all adults, and then some came with kids. So we got to figure that part out. But that's why we always we do a test pilot of something. But it's basically it's camping, but we take everybody's cell phone away from them. So we really make them try to get back to nature. Like I said, I'm really into the environment and follow the National Park Service motto of getting people out to experience this. And we're so close to Philadelphia and New York, and they're just dying for that what we have here. Especially up in Carbon County. So.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Heffley. I'm going to throw a quick comment in before Representative Whelan starts. To each of the four of you, most of you have some statewide organization. I would encourage you, whether it's this year or every year, but when you have some of these issues and you've really delineated some great stuff, I'm taking more notes than I ever did through high school. It's embarrassing, but anyhow. Make sure you encourage them to prioritize 2 or 3 good issues when they come before us. Because other things that get kind of clouded, or if the first thing people start talking about is we need more money, all of a sudden, legislators don't always hear that because that's all they hear from anybody that comes to them. But, the child labor laws, something I haven't thought about. I do construction. I think about the whole cement mixing. I actually was just at a plant the other day. It was pretty cool with the stones I didn't take. They took up and put it in this big giant hopper, and I'm watching this whole process. That's pretty darn cool. I guess that's how they make cement. And all the way down the line, same thing with some of the accounting stuff that you had raised, the vaping issue. I'm embarrassed. I originally voted for that thing. It was just kind of part of a larger conglomerate discussion in the budget, and you folks put faces to these issues, and that's the stuff we need to hear. And our legislators need to know more about you than you need to know about them, even though we run around advertising ourselves all the time. So I'm going to stop at that and turn to Jeff. I have a couple comments at the end, and then we'll turn it over to our gracious host, Marcia. You've been tremendous. This is very, very informative.
Thank you, and another great panel. Mr. Vape, huh? Okay, I guess that's what I'm known as. Bonnie, you did a great job. I mean, you sounded like me on the House, the hearing that we had, and I'm not sure if you attended that, but it was on June 27th. I did see you down there, yep. So, wow. Where do we start on this? I have been promised that it was going to be handled in the budget negotiations. I'm not sure if it's in there, out of there, what the Senate's going to do with it. I am just so frustrated And as Kerry said, and I think we all as legislators have to be embarrassed what we did to small business. I mean, this should be a model case for all legislators currently and in the future on how not to conduct business, whether it's in Harrisburg or Washington or any of the other state capitals. Just as background, and I think some of this you covered, but none of the contiguous states, with the exception of West Virginia, has, other than a sales tax on the products. That's it. West Virginia has the 7.5 cent, which I believe you had mentioned that. My particular piece of legislation, House Bill 1477, has the nickel. And I'm digging my heels in because I still want it to be, if it has to be at all, it should be just 5 cents per milliliter.
There's the other states that have a criminal tax, besides Virginia, it's 5 cents.
Right. North Carolina, I believe, is one. And again, because of the contiguous states, and we have a lot of them, that's why we're called the Keystone State, the governors from there should be sending our governor flowers and chocolates monthly when they get their tax revenues, their sales tax revenues from their vape shops. I mean, we literally are chasing them over the border.
Yes.
I had a very large vape shop in my district that, you know, and you had mentioned going bankrupt. It even got worse for that couple. They ended up in a divorce. So, I mean, it wrecks families, and it's all over this what I believe strongly is total misinformation being spread by the Cancer Society, Heart and Lung Association, and it's not helpful. It really is not helpful.
And we
for
know
this
that you're trying to
business.
help us, and we really appreciate you.
Well, thank you. Internet sales, could you explain, you're more, I mean, you're not that close to a border, right? I mean, how far is it from your shop to?
10 minutes to the New Jersey border.
Oh, okay, so
Yes.
you are
Yes.
relatively close. I do hear from some vape shop owners that are still hanging on that, more towards the central part of the state, that they're getting hammered with internet sales.
Yes.
Is that their
Yes.
customers are going there?
Because even if, with the per milliliter tax, if it makes the liquid a little bit more, the biggest issue is with the hardware. If I have to spend $50 for a piece of hardware, then I pay $20 tax on that before it goes on the shelf, is sold. And then we have to make something on it. So say that it's sold, so I paid $70 and I can only sell it for $90. And people say, oh, I can get it online for $70, and they're gone, that's it. People do it all the time. They are supposed to claim it, and you know that they're not going to. We're 10 minutes from the border. They drive across the border into New Jersey. Somebody actually opened a vape shop across the border where we cross over to New Jersey at the bridge. Opened a vape shop right there so that people would come over and buy from them and not buy from our stores.
That's exactly what I'm hearing, and it's just so sad. And Sue, the Department of Revenue, frustration with your issues, frustration with getting accurate information from the Department of Revenue. Talk about dealing with antiquated systems. I have a whole file here on information that's been requested by Chairman O'Neill from the House Finance Committee. I mean, they don't have a clue.
It's difficult, and I was flabbergasted earlier this week when I got a call from a revenue agent in Bethlehem wanting to file liens against my client. Why? Well, they have an outstanding liability from 13 to 14. No, we don't. Paid in full, timely, done. So it's very frustrating at times, trying to maneuver.
And one of the questions, and again, there was, at the peak, there was what, how many vape shops?
Over
Best-
400.
There was over 400, now we're down in the 200-some
Yes.
range, and they're dropping like
Yes.
flies. The, trying to get the Department of Revenue to identify vape shops as a category, which, I don't know, maybe they should hire a fifth grader. There's got to be a way with E-Tides, I'm familiar with E-Tides, you know, that they can designate what classification type of operation you are. I mean, they did it with cell phones, or what do they call those, this disposable cell phone technology to get the tax out of, I mean, these fixes appear to be so simple, but yet we're putting people unemployed, hundreds of people unemployed, I mean, there's not a one of us in the House, I swear, that doesn't advocate for filling their storefronts in their district. But yet we do the opposite. We do the opposite.
We have empty shelves.
Yeah,
We can't afford to fill them.
yeah, and the actual storefronts, we're shutting them down. They're now vacant. It's just so frustrating. So please keep advocating. I know you're a member of the association, and your help to me and to your legislator and senator is invaluable, but it's also at the statewide level. Thank you very much for your advocacy on this, as well you should. And we're going to keep, even if I have to do procedural movements here in the fall, if it's not taken care of in the budget process, we are going to move forward on this and get it fixed.
Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
I'm going to let Marcia close this out, but I'm going to take advantage of two quick questions. One, I'm going to put an offer out to assist Representative Heffley in approaching DEP and finding out what more they can do on this sewer plant thing and whether we can get them down here or not. We do have a new secretary there, whether that's going to make a difference or not. I happen to be one of a handful of individuals trying to change some of this regulatory reform, but actually make it real. Don't just give me lip service, but actually quit strangulating business.
I think that there's that process mapping, that they use. I know the hospitals use it, the Six Sigma thing, where you basically say, okay, let's take the process of what we have to go through, and let's really look at why we need to do any of those processes. So, and it starts, like I said, with a lot of the applications. Probably you have the same thing. It would help if they actually helped you start the project, so that you could go ahead and define exactly all the things that they are going to require you to do, and understand why. I mean, sometimes they require you to do stuff, and I'll give you, for instance, for the water park, I had to do a bog turtle study at the top of the mountain. I had done a bog turtle study at the bottom of the mountain 2 years before that, but that doesn't count. But in the meantime, I've learned that bog turtles don't live above 600 feet above sea level. And somebody in Harrisburg is looking at a map that's flat. The top of the mountain is at 1,200 feet. It's those kind of things that that just to me, like, if they had actually come out to the site, I mean, I have it not only on the DEP side, but even on the, the national park side. I can't get, somebody from the national parks who's, we neighbor and everything, to come to the site.
Mr. Chairman,
look at it.
Did that study include that these turtles couldn't get up on the lifts? Is that what the problem was?
Gary.
Don't be making fun of those so short legs. We get a running start, we get on that lift, baby.
But that's why when I say best practices, best process, there's people that do this in private sector for a living, and they do it for GE, and we need that in government. We need to process map and make it more efficient.
Well, I'm going to say something that probably steps on toes, but I would encourage you to remember that when you vote elected officials at whatever level, are they really fundamentally knowledgeable? Have they ever worked in the private sector? Do they have the desire to understand what goes on a day-to-day basis? I actually had a question for Lorraine quickly on the reutilizations of some of your raw materials, probably not raw materials, but some reuse materials. Does DEP, are they appreciative? Do you ever get any kind of acknowledgement of, that's pretty significant reuse of some old materials. I didn't really realize you could use the grinding up of the old concrete. We do it a lot with roadside aggregates and paving materials, but if I'm a department like that, I would want to be accommodating you to whatever extent I could to continue to perpetuate the fact that you're being environmentally friendly as well as reusing materials.
The reality is, when we submit application for beneficial use of material that is going to a landfill, the regulatory process is significantly onerous. And I would say that 90% of the products that we permit for are, the timeline is so long that we actually lose the product to.
Get a hold of these guys when that happens, because some of their own regs require them to act on these in 43 days, and we hear horror stories that it's 200 days, 250 days. That's what we fundamentally want to be able to go to the governor's office and say, Gov, you got to change it. This is ridiculous. You're choking these people right out of business.
The reality is they touch it in 43 days.
Yes, that's right. And shuffle it back to the bottom of the
But
pile.
then they move it somewhere else, and the clock starts over again.
Yes. We were trying to figure out the language to change that and not have them play that shuffle game.
And a lot of the time, the response from the local DEP offices come back to us that they're understaffed. And we understand that they're understaffed. We all have budget constraints regardless of whether it's the private sector or the public sector. And the reality is we have timelines that we have to meet, and the DEP should have to meet those timelines as well.
Very good on that, and I'm going to take Barb's suggestions, see what we can do about customer service surveys in government. And last, Sue, before I hand over to Marcia, you really raised my red flag on the whole cybersecurity thing. We're going to make some inquiries, and I'll get back to you directly on that because it's something I want to know the answer to, and I think your profession should know that.
It's a huge,
And the fact that you're
huge
being
issue.
targeted as an industry is also alarming.
Yeah, and when I had my breach, when we realized what had happened, nationwide, they were up to about 175 practitioners that had been breached at that point in time, and the number's gone way up since then. We're a target.
Well, we need to hear that. You guys are lucky. You got some good reps around here. I'm honored to serve with them. With that, Marcia, thank you very much on behalf of the Policy Committee for hosting us in your great community. I'm looking forward to seeing a good place to eat in about 10 minutes.
Okay, good. Well, yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I want to thank the panel as well, and I know all of you. Well, I met Barb today, but I, of course, know Blue Mountain and go up to eat at Slopeside. But I think, Jeff, to your point, Bonnie's been in the office, and one of the reasons I signed on to your legislation was because Bonnie came into the office. So, and I've talked to CPAs, and, I've met with Lafarge and other cement companies. So I think it is, especially for people who are watching this, to know we do listen. You need to come in and you need to tell us the problems. 5 years is ridiculous that you wait to get a permit through. I don't know. I just don't understand why these agencies take so long. And we hear that all the time. They say, can you sign this? And then you send it in, and then you forgot to, like somebody said before, dot your I, cross your T, and then they send it back, and then their 43 days start again, or whatever it is. So, we hear that a lot. So those are the things we needed to hear. One of the reasons that, Kerry had asked to have the policy committee come out, and I picked some of the testifiers that I did because they're all people that I've heard from. The only thing I'm going to say to you is be careful what you ask for that infrastructure. When that cement and bridge closes, you're going to have a headache there, but that.
Well,
so.
I think they're going to take 2 of our buildings, so we're prepared.
Okay, good. But thank you. I want to thank everyone. I want to thank policy, the staff for coming out and setting this up. Morgan, thank you. Jay, with the township, again, I want to thank you all. And Mr. Chairman, thank you for accommodating us here and coming to the Lehigh Valley and to my district. So thank you, everyone, and have safe travels home.
Thank you for coming and listening to us.
Very good. We are adjourned. Thank you to the audiovisual guys, too. Great job.
Thank you for letting me come on your